We are continuing to react to the news that James Franklin is out at Penn State. He was let go after coaching for 12 seasons with the Nittany Lions, coming off of 3 straight losses. And as we continue to react to this, we want to turn our attention to somebody who is there on the ground. From our 24/7 sports site, Lions 24/7, we have Tyler Donohue here joining us. And Tyler, from a beat reporter standpoint, I think the word that you used was the whiplash that you guys have gone through from being the #1 team preseason, or the #2 team preseason ranked, looking at national title aspirations, everything out ahead, to all of a sudden covering a coaching firing and then a future coaching search. So what all happened to start this football season? We're in mid-October.
Yeah, hello, Emily. Certainly not the conversation I thought we'd be having here the second Sunday of October. I look back 2 months ago. James Franklin's on the record talking about how this is the best personnel he has put together through 12 years at Penn State. He talked about that meaning the roster, talked about that meaning the staff. Truly felt like this was go for launch in terms of chasing the first national championship in 39 years here for the Penn State football program. Instead, we get to the point now where in mid-October, James Franklin's not even on the top of the pyramid here. He's not in the building anymore. And a major reset for Penn State football is incoming. Obviously, they're going to have Terry Smith as the interim coach. He's been an assistant for James Franklin for 12 years. A lot of Franklin's guys are going to be still in the building moving forward. But this is the beginning of a major change for what Penn State's going to look like. You know, just 15 days ago, this Penn State squad's in a top 10 matchup against Oregon. It was the best whiteout environment I've encountered in 9 years covering this program. They have a lead in overtime, and the crowd sensed it. It was like, oh my gosh, is there a breakthrough moment here? Is he finally going to get that win against a top-ranked opponent? They didn't win that game. They got embarrassed at UCLA in stunning fashion. They brought no life to the game last night against Northwestern, lost that one. And like the Oregon game, there was a lot of anger directed for James Franklin, and it felt like a wake in his press conference yesterday. It was a very short opening statement. He was asked a couple times, is it still good for him to be the head coach at Penn State for him? Is it still what he wants in his life? Kind of worked his way around that question without actually answering it. And now, you know, come Sunday afternoon, he is no longer the guy in charge at the Penn State Lasch building. Whiplash was the way I put it. That's the way it feels, because we're just so recently in a spot where James Franklin was running the show, looking like it was going to be another deep playoff run. And the expectations were like, if they don't get a bye week in the playoffs, it's going to be a little short of expectations for the regular season. Now, honestly, they might not qualify for a bowl game the way things are going and the way the schedule lays out. So very stark contrast. I think you could probably qualify this as one of the all-time clunkers in terms of expectations versus reality for a college football campaign in modern college football history.
Yeah, it is absolutely wild the way you put that into perspective. 15 days ago, they were playing in that Oregon game, and so much has changed since then. According to reported figures, this is the second biggest buyout ever. So clearly, they really wanted to make this move. So Tyler, whoever comes next, what kind of pressure does this now put on the next guy?
Yeah, I mean, if Pat Kraft is willing to make the decision and the university signs off on it to make this kind of a move and that kind of an investment in moving away from James Franklin, you've got to get this hire right. And it's going to be a costly hire. They're not going to go to the bargain basement and find someone to fill these shoes. I think they're going to take some big swings. And ultimately, it's going to be Pat Kraft that is going to have to take ownership of whatever comes next for this team. You know, while James Franklin couldn't get over the hump in those big games, and clearly this year you were seeing an avalanche kind of build up with negativity and these losses, he's a guy who, for 12 years here, for 11 and a half years here, really built a culture that I think was worth applauding in a lot of ways, and a lot of structure. And he put Penn State in a place where, you know, people didn't really anticipate they'd be coming off the scandal 13, 14 years ago. And so now the next hire needs to be someone whose mission is very clear. It's not to go 10-2. It's not to get to New Year's Six bowls. It's not to get to the first or second round of the playoffs. It's to go win the first national championship since 1986. And that means they're going to have to restock the roster. They're going to have to make the right coordinator hires themselves. And James Franklin seemingly kind of struck out on his last couple high-profile offensive coordinator hires, and that set them back. And ultimately, it's going to be a trickle down from Pat Kraft, the athletic director, to the head coach, and the way he decides to fill out this next regime. We'll see what kind of carryover that has, whether some of these staff members are retained from the team, and how much of this roster decides to stick it out and buy into a new team. But whether you talk about NIL investments or staff investments, you're going to have a head coach who probably isn't going to show up and just be like, great, pay me. He's going to show up and be wanting to find out how much he can pay his staff, how much he can go pay players, and he's going to want a lot of that opportunity. I think if you want to take a big swing in today's college football market, you've got to be able to present that wide scale investment financially that goes beyond just what the head coach is seeing in his bank account. It's going to be what his top assistants see in their bank account, and ultimately what you can do when it comes to the transfer portal, bringing in high school talent. So I think there's a lot to look at here. But I think to make this move now and knowing what they had to kind of swallow in the process, I think they're going to be very proactive, and I think they mean business about chasing the national championship here.
You certainly hope you don't make this decision without having some sort of idea of where you go next. So, Tyler, if you were Pat Kraft, who I don't want to be him right now, but where would you go with this?
Well, I think, one of the hotter names right now, it's hard to ignore what Kurt Cignetti has accomplished at Indiana. And not just at Indiana 1 year, but now it's a 2-year sample size. Go on the road yesterday and beat Oregon. And, of course, before that, a lot of success at a lower level of college football. Matt Rule is having a successful season at Nebraska, his best season so far. He's a former walk-on linebacker here at Penn State. I think he has a lot of fond memories about those roots. And, Pat Kraft and him have a history going back to their time at Temple. And Manny Diaz is a guy that comes to mind for me as well. Remember, Pat Kraft briefly hired him at Temple before Miami came calling, and then he went down and took the Miami job. But Manny Diaz is pretty beloved here for what he accomplished as a defensive coordinator. He is very much a face of the franchise type guy, a guy that can impress moms when it comes to the recruiting trail, can impress donors. And so he's someone I think you got to keep an eye on. And I think you work your way through this list. If you want to talk about the biggest potential swing of all, Urban Meyer's out there. He's doing TV. Is that a fit? He comes with some baggage. There's no doubt about that. Some of the stuff in his history, but he also comes with 3 national championship rings at a couple different schools. And he knows how to assemble a staff. He knows how to build a national championship contending roster. If you can get a sense that he is ready to go all in on another job, and you can kind of bring and you can make that very clear to him of what your expectations are for a 4 or 5 year process, maybe that's a swing worth taking as well. I think there's a lot of names to look at. I'm very intrigued by Kenny Dillingham and what he's done at Arizona State. Hasn't been the prettiest year for him, but I think ultimately he brings a lot of the enthusiasm, energy, kind of the program structure that maybe you're interested in if you're doing a reset here. He's been to the college football playoff, and we'll have some stuff over at Lions247.com with our hot board, but a lot of names to look at. But again, I think this needs to be at least the first few names on it, significant swings for Pat Kraft.
Yeah, you phrased it perfectly. You got to take a big swing. Not only has the standard been set, you want to win a national championship, but in order to do that, you have to go through powers that are emerging like an Oregon, an Ohio State, and Michigan, and everything else that you experience in the Big Ten and modern college football. Tyler Donohue, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. You heard him mention you can check out Lions 24/7 for all things Penn State. Check out their, I'm sure it's going to be constantly changing, hot board, and just the latest on everything that is happening. So be sure to check in with 24/7 Sports.